Just some stats on as far as, we're talking about why invest in this profession. Another side point to make there is it, another good question to ask, is it a good time or is it a good idea to invest in this profession? Not so why, but sort of why not. Well, the why nots are sort of these bottom portions of this graph. So this is a major airline pilot hiring graph since 1985, FAPA, Future and Active Pilot Advisors, has tracked major airline pilot hiring. Every year, on a month-to-month basis, for every major airline in the United States, we have tracked major airline pilot hiring, and we're sort of the only source for that information worldwide. And since 1985, the record was set in the year 2000 at 5,001, just over 5,000 pilots hired in any given year. Here we are in 2017, and we will probably break that record this year. So that's in what, almost a 35-year time span, and we might break that record. Now, again, we would be remiss if we didn't point out these bottom points. So you can kind of look at the dates, the years, and pick out economical or other major events in history that have driven those. So yes, it's nice to look at all these high points, especially that we're in a high point now, and all signs are pointing to increase, which we'll go over in a second. But we would definitely need to point out those bottom points. So when we say dynamic industry, this is part of that. It's volatile at times as well. There's also some other things that aren't necessarily related to pilot hiring in the industry as a whole, but very personal things like medical things that could come up that make your occupation as an airline pilot very, very sensitive or volatile as well. So we use Boeing's numbers. It's a pretty good forecast. Boeing does a forecast almost every year for pilot hiring demand. Well, they specifically do it for how many airplanes they think they're going to sell, right? Go figure. And then with any given airplane, you obviously need a certain number of pilots to fly it, usually 2 pilots per airplane. And then on top of that, depending on which airline you're talking about, they need 10 or 12 or 14 pilots per airplane on a monthly basis to actually fly those airplanes, because airplanes fly 20 hours of the day or 18 hours of the day. So using their numbers, it's going to be between 2016 and 2036, over that 20-year period, it's going to go to 46,950 aircraft worldwide. Now, if we break that out into pilots, it'll go up to 630,000. Those are new pilots between now and 2036. 637,000 new pilots. Now, that's obviously worldwide. You can break it down by region. So North America alone is 117,000 new pilots. Now, I don't want to get too much more into the numbers, because it is pretty boring even for me. But that 117,000 pilot demand number just doesn't add up when you consider how many pilots are currently coming through the pipeline and are expected to over that time period.
Most of you are here today because you want to find out how to be a pilot. There are several pathways to the pilot career, and they all can tie in differently, different paths. As Tom said, there's no one way to become a pilot. So we're going to talk a little bit about those different ways. So if you're asking yourself, how on earth am I going to get into one of these schools or into one of these airlines? We have cadet schools. Our cadet programs take you from the certified flight instructor level. We ask that you have at least 500 hours, and we'll start talking to you. We can really start the conversation at 400, but at 500, I can start paying you for your flight time to be an employee with us through the cadet program. So while you're in school and you're building your hours, for every 100 hours that you earn, I'm going to cut you a check for you to spend on whatever you'd like. I would prefer you spend it on flight training, but that's your choice. You can have a long conversation with your parents about where that check comes from if you are going to go through us with the cadet program. But you're going to have the opportunity to build hours in school. And when you hit that point where you've got those 500 hours where we can start paying you, that's your first, last, and only interview you will have to do for your entire career. That's huge.